Welcome, everyone. Welcome to another edition of Remixing Politics and Culture with me, your host, Pam. I am a marketing professional, marketing and public relations professional with a passion for social justice, voter advocacy, and culture. And tonight, I think I have an interesting show for you. We're going to hear from the ex-MAGA Granny, Pam Hemphill, who served 2 months in federal prison for her part in the J6 insurrection. And most recently, she campaigned very thoroughly and heavily for Kamala Harris in her very red state of Boise, Idaho. We'll discuss her past and what life is like for her now and her concerns with the second term of Trump. We'll have attorney Nareissa Smith, who's been on the show before, as has Pam, who is a former professor of law and is a legal scholar. We're going to lean on Nareissa and her knowledge of constitutional law to help us navigate maintaining our rights in this next term with Project 2025 knocking at our door. And how someone like Pam Hemphill, who has now seen the light, how she must move to stay safe and to ensure that her constitutional rights aren't violated. I'm going to introduce our guest first, and then we're going to see a video. We're going to change things around a little bit for the show. Okay, so first up, I want to introduce Nareissa Smith. All right. Nareissa is a lawyer, speaker, teacher, and journalist. For over a decade, Nareissa worked as a law professor, teaching criminal law, U.S. constitutional law, and classes such as critical race theory. Nareissa thoroughly understands the many ways the American legal system perpetuates racism, sexism, and other forms of inequality. Welcome back to the show, Nareissa.
Hello, glad to be back. Good to be here.
All right. And next up, we have Pam Hemphill, dubbed as the ex-MAGA Granny by former Fox TV host Tucker Carlson. Pam is by training and profession an alcohol and drug abuse specialist. She is known internationally for speaking out against the MAGA cult, as she calls it, and for serving time in prison for her actions on January 6th. Pam is a brave woman. I mean, she's all over the place, and I'm so proud to have her back on my show. Welcome back to the show, Pam.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you having me on.
Okay, so ladies, like I said at the opening, I want to start the show off just a little bit differently. I'm going to show a video that a French news outlet did on Pam. It's rather short, but it gives you a whole synopsis pretty quickly. And so we're going to look into that first. All right, guys. So let me share my screen. No, that's the wrong screen. Okay, there it is. Okay. All right. Do you see it?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
January 6, 2021. Back then, she was convinced that Trump had won re-election, so she went to Washington, taking on the role of a citizen journalist for the MAGA movement.
I was so excited. I said, oh, yeah, that would be the big one. And so I went there and I was live on Facebook because I had thousands of followers. So I was like their eyes for January the 6th.
Let us in. It's our house. It's our street. Let us in.
Pam filmed everything, including the assault on the building. Despite being injured, she made her way inside.
I made a decision to stay and videotape, and that's what got me in trouble.
8 months later, she was arrested by the FBI. In their report, investigators used pictures to prove she actively took part in the assault. Pamela pleaded guilty and was sentenced to 2 months in prison.
It was horrible. I counted every day, every moment. The food you wouldn't give to a starving dog. It was horrible.
That's when Trump supporters got wind of her story and turned her into a martyr. Even the former president himself mentioned her on social media, but Pam had changed.
Trump has brainwashed us and gaslighted us and turned MAGA into a cult. I'm going to vote for Biden if he's the one that's running for office at the time.
Today, the former MAGA granny is using her voice to speak out against the movement.
What they've done with the majority of the MAGA and all the Republicans is convinced you that the Democrats want this to be a communist country. And if Trump doesn't stand up and push back, we're not going to have a nation. And that's his message all the time. And it's a big lie.
Pamela is even considering suing Trump for inciting the mob when she says he knew he had lost the election.
Now let me ask you this.
Okay. All right. It went quickly into another video. All right. So, Pam, how are you doing right now after all of the campaigning for Kamala Harris and in your very red state of Idaho? Tell us what's going on with you right now.
Oh, well, as we all, the next day, realizing that Trump had won, oh my God. I think I went into denial and I went over to the corner and I held a sign that said, resist 202025.org. I was promoting this organization that I found that was against the Project 2025. It's like, no, I'm not giving up yet. We're going to push back. That's why I wear my shirt. Resist. We're not done yet.
Right, absolutely. And what are some of your concerns right now that Trump, especially a person in your position, now that Trump is going to be back in office in a matter of days?
Frightened. I have a lot of faith, though. And for example, the wonderful lady you have on today, people like that are out there and pushing back and will hopefully, we have our Constitution. I think Trump's going to have a big wake-up call because the problem they have is they're underestimating the Democrats. And I don't think he's going to be able to get away with a lot that he's thinking he's going to get away with. But it's still scary. I mean, we're all just waiting to see what's going to happen here. And it's going to be a lot of pushback. It's going to be a lot of work.
Because and we're going to get into pushback in a moment. Now, Nareissa, help us out here. With Trump's nature to be a very vindictive person, really believing in retribution and things like that, how can we as citizens, how can someone like Pam, who's already been on his radar, and now she's seen the light, she's come to the other side of things, how do you protect yourself from something like that?
Oh, wow. First of all, I have to say, I'm just so honored to be on this panel with you. I've seen some of your interviews with outlets, and I just think that you are fabulous. So I'm so happy to be here with you. And I would say that we're already starting to see glimpses of how Trump would treat a second term in terms of who he's selecting already. And here are some things that we're seeing. I'm going to explain how it applies to, I'm going to say Miss Hemphill because it's two Pams, so I got to make sure. But what we've seen already is he is picking people who are loyalists. The people that he's picking are people who have proven by and large that they're okay with pretty much anything that he does. And the quote that I heard from him during the campaign that sort of sent a shiver down my spine was, he said, well, the first time I didn't know what I was doing, so I hired people who I thought, would be good for the jobs. But now I know what I'm doing, so I'm just going to pick who I want. And we're seeing that. I mean, Linda McMahon from the WWE in charge of the Department of Education. I mean, it's supposed to be reading, writing, and arithmetic, not reading, writing, and wrestling. I mean, I don't know how that came about, but apparently so. And I think that we should all be concerned about these moves, because by him putting loyalists in place, to me, this is just my opinion, he's signaling that he's wanting to reward the loyalists, and he wants to put people in there who are basically yes men and yes women. He doesn't want the pushback. He doesn't want the General Kellys. He doesn't want, anyone who's going to speak up or talk back. So that's part one. And how I think that means that how it will trickle down to everyday citizens is in large ways and small. To folks who are on his radar, like Miss Hemphill or like Jimmy Kimmel, like people who I know that I've heard him say negative things, but even like entities, like he wants to remove the licenses from CBS and NBC. I think that unfortunately we're going to see him doing a lot of things that are intended to reward his supporters and to punish people that he views as disloyal. So last time when he was president, it came out that he dislikes Jimmy Kimmel so much that he asked the IRS to have him audited, and they wouldn't do it. They're like, that's not legal. So I think, and I know this isn't saying much, but I think that the protections for Miss Hemphill and other folks is going to depend a lot on what, not these people that we hear about all the time, who are going to be in the prominent roles, like the Pam Bondi. Is it Bondi or Biondi? I can never say it right. Like that. Or it's going to be like to those everyday workers who are going to be making these decisions, and whether or not they're going to have the spine to stand up and say, no, I'm not going to do this. And how far those folks are willing to go. And I know that that's not very reassuring, but I think that that's where we're at. It's going to be up to those people who aren't direct appointees to put up some fight and to say, no, I'm not doing that. That's ridiculous. I refuse.
Pam, literally, I think you're being rather polite about just being scared or what have you. What do you know of some of the other January 6 people that were incarcerated? Do you know of any of them?
Yeah, there's two here in my state. So one, I tried talking to her before she went to court, trying to, say, hey, look, we're guilty, and I think you need to plead guilty. But she got really upset at me. It started part of a smear campaign against me, but a little nervous when she gets out, if she does, if Trump pardons them all. Because she's was a Marine, but she's a loose cannon, a lot of anger. They're just so convinced that the election wasn't stolen and that I'm a traitor now. So
I see. So now you're in a red state, so obviously he won there. And then when I asked you before, Pam, were you thinking about moving away? When will your probation be over where you can move?
not until September next year.
2025?
Yeah, I got 3 years probation. So,
Okay.
and they're not going to let me move unless it's a very, very good reason. Because I already tried. I went to South Carolina, and I was there for about 9 months, and then I've moved back here to Boise for different reasons. So that you only get like one move, I think it is. So.
Wow. I don't know. I don't know the law. Well, so Nareissa, you know what? This whole thing about it being a cult, Pam, we talked about this once before when you were on before. How do you? I thought that one reason why you were able to rationalize yourself out of it is because of the fact that you're a substance abuse counselor. and very much the steps that one takes to overcome something like that, you have to be really in tune with yourself. You have to be realistic, and you can't lie to yourself, right? So you have that advantage. What are we going to do for these people, like you say, that are really, truly believers that the election was stolen? And we all know that that's not the truth. What do we do about that? What do you think?
Well, it's the same approach you have when you're working with alcoholics and addicts. Until they hit a bottom, until they have come to the point where they see it for themselves, there's nothing we can do. You know, in fact, for me, it was a good therapist that said, Pam, before I started court procedures, said, look, you're not a victim of January 6th, because I was trying to tell him how I didn't push barriers. I got shoved in the Capitol. I was making up all this excuses. And he says, it doesn't matter. You had a choice. You were not a victim. You were a volunteer. You could have left when you started seeing it getting really out of hand. So you need to own up to that. And I thought, I'm not going back to see that therapist. You know, but I got home that night, and I realized he was right. I had a choice. I'm not a victim. Now, of course, I didn't participate in, no violence or anything, but however, that doesn't matter. You were there, you broke the law. It's that simple. And they hate when I say that. They just get no, we were protecting our, we're standing up for our nation. We were patriots. I said, I'm sorry. No, you weren't. You were a criminal that day. That's the fact. You're not a patriot. You broke the law. The Capitol was closed down to everybody that day. So it's hard to talk to these people. They're in so much denial, just like an addict or an alcoholic. They don't hear you. There's just too much denial right now going on.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, Nareissa, please.
I would like to know, Ms. Hemphill, what do you think are the reasons for that deep denial? People are, have all these theories about what the base and the root of it is. I would love to hear your opinion about why you think that denial is so strong and so hard to break through, because I think almost all of us have a story about a friend, family member, or co-worker, who just they've gone that, and you can't really reach them. So I would just like to hear you say where you think that denial stems from.
Well, coupled with, of course, Trump starting off with fake news, and that's what dictators do. So you don't listen to anybody but Trump, right? And then he hijacked their brain with a lot of fear that they're coming after me, but they're really coming after you. So all the tactics that Trump has used, the gaslighting, the love bombing, all the characteristics of a narcissist. And my own thoughts on this, and for myself too, I was raised with narcissists. So we're attracted to them subconsciously, and we don't realize that we even are. I feel, this is just my opinion, this is unresolved childhood issues that they never dealt with their whole life. And now they have a place to put it. And it's like a reenactment of their own childhood, and they don't want to deal with it. And I get it. I understand, because it's really hard to take responsibility and look at yourself. So much either to stay out there and be a victim and have everybody feel sorry for me and collect a lot of money, because that's all the J6ers are doing, is grifting.
Wow.
That was very good to hear.
Yeah. You know what, Pam? Right now, in your situation now, do you feel safe? Do you feel like you're okay? Because I think the last time that I communicated with you, you had mentioned that you have been doxxed by someone. So what's going on with that?
It's part of it's, I can't shut up, and I keep pushing back on all these maggots and all these far right militias, because they know me. In Boise, Idaho, I was I was hanging out with Ammon Bundy.
Yeah, you told me that last time.
So I'm in the, I don't know what got me to move back here. I wasn't thinking, because man, I'm hated, and I don't care. It's okay. I guess there's a part of me wanting to save these people, but I'm not going to be able to save them. But yeah, I've already just recently got doxxed again. I'm very nervous all the time I go outside. I don't know if you've watched some of the stuff that's going on Twitter and now Blue Sky everywhere. It's horrifying, but I don't care. I'm standing up, pushing back on them because they're coming after the LGBTQ community, and they're in this community. And I know the lady personally, called the Idaho Liberty Dogs. They walk around with their ARs and their open carry, and they're very far right. And they're picking on them, trying to get a poster that the LGBT has put up in the library where they meet as a group for support. And they don't want that flyer up. Well, too bad. So I'm staying out here, and I'm going to push back on anything. Because what I was told is the best way to push back and resist right now is right in your own community. When you hear something going on that's not right, you just got to put your fear in the closet for a while and just go out there and stand up for these people and do what you can. So I called the library and I said, please leave that poster up there. So yeah, you should, if you ever get on their page, you'll see my face. You'll see everything they're saying about me. It's whatever.
Well, the thing is that I think that's the key focus of not being afraid, because we do. I mean, in honesty, I have to say it. When Trump got reelected, there is immediate feeling of fear, and that's the way bullies want you to be, so that you succumb to them and you won't push back. You won't push back, and we have to push back. Nareissa, what are your ideas on how we can push back legally? Maybe we got to go back to the old school time of stuff of the civil rights movement.
Yeah, I've been thinking about a couple of things that I wanted to say. One thing that I wanted to say was, and I wish I could think of who said it, because it's somebody who I know is prominent, but this was someone who was involved in, I do believe it was the Holocaust. And they were talking about fear, like you said, and was basically saying, they want you to be afraid, because once you're afraid, you kind of shut down and you stop paying attention. And once that happens, you can't strategize and you can't organize. And gosh, I wish I could think of who said it, because I would give them credit, but I can't right now. And I can't Google because I'm in the thing. But just know it wasn't me. But I do think that, first of all, fighting back is going to take a lot of us making sure that we're doing just that we're not constantly afraid. And don't get me wrong, I understand that we all have reason to be afraid for different reasons, whether it's because of our sexual orientation, the color of our skin, our political beliefs. A lot of us have a reason to be scared. In this country, there are people who don't even live in this country who are afraid for the election result, because they know how it's going to impact their lives and people that they love, whether those people live in the West Bank or Ukraine or Poland or wherever else Vlad has his sights set, or if they live in Taiwan, and I'm not sorry, not did I mean to say Taiwan, but the area that China keeps trying to annex, and I keep getting everything mixed up. And I know it's not Thailand, because that's a completely separate country, but y'all know what I'm talking about, and I will trust that you know what I'm talking about. But saying that to say that there are a lot of people here in America and all around the world who have good reason to be afraid. But I think that the key is we can't let the fear control us. And we're going to have to find ways to do that. But I also think that it comes from us connecting with each other.
Yes.
And making sure that we reach out and talk to each other and communicate with each other, check in on our friends that we might not have heard from in a while, just say, hey, are you okay? Because on top of all of this, even if Kamala had won, all of us still have life. As the kids would say, life be lifing, everything is still going on.
Right.
All of us, there are people who have illnesses going on, financial issues, and just loneliness. All of us have something going on, and we still have to heal from those core issues. So we got to keep ourselves healthy, sane, and in community, I think, is the first step. That has nothing to do with the law.
Yes.
Legally, how do we fight back? I think is a far more complicated question. I spent years studying the United States Constitution, all these Supreme Court cases, and for the first time in the redacted years that I passed the bar and have been a lawyer, I have no clue what is going to happen next. And that in itself is a little
scares
scary.
me, Nareissa, because I listen.
It scares me too.
You had the answer because I know how you are.
Yeah.
Research.
Yeah. I mean, but this is like, there's a comedian named John Mulaney, and the first time Trump was elected, he had this joke, and he said, people are acting like this is normal, but it's sort of like if you went into a hospital and you saw a horse in the hospital, you would say, how'd this horse get in here? Why is there a horse in the hospital? This is not a place where you normally see a horse, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, so seeing that, even though he already has had one term, it's hard to predict what he's going to do, especially this in conjunction with the fact we already talked about he's picking these loyalists, but adding to that this new Supreme Court decision.
Oh, God.
Now, keep in mind, they did not give him carte blanche. I know that he thinks that, though, because people keep thinking this. He's not that sharp of a guy. And I'm sure that the people around him are not telling him that it doesn't mean he can do anything. Within his presidential duties, he has immunity. That does not extend to, say, attacking Nancy Pelosi on the street in Washington, D.C. It does not do that.
Well, what about putting the military out on us if we're protesting peacefully?
See, that is the thing that's been keeping me up at night because of I was talking to a girlfriend of mine, and she had mentioned Matt Gaetz as being like the worst pick that he had picked. Of course, he's withdrawn his name now. And I said, no, it's the guy for Secretary of Defense. That's the one who keeps me up at night. And she was like, well, why is that? I said, this guy is not just rumored, but he had people in the military who reported him for having ties to white supremacist groups. He's got different like white supremacist like tattoos and stuff. There's all these things on him on that. And I just read today that he really dislikes people on the left and thinks that there's not just a culture war, but there should be like a war.
What?
Yes, I just saw that today. I think it was in the Atlantic or Slate. I'm not sure, but it was one of those because those are, I think, the only two that I read today. But yeah, so this guy is off his rocker, to use a technical term. Right. You're the counsel. You can tell me if that's a technical term. But I think, yeah, he's off his rocker. And that's not good for any of us. But if you think about, like, say, the Black Lives Matter protests that happened in 2020, and how people were protesting peacefully, and Trump wanted in DC, he wanted the military to go out there in front of the White House and shoot those folks.
And Milley stopped it. He told them.
Exactly. And General Milley said, under no circumstances will I do that. And there are laws, the Posse Comitatus law, and there's a couple other ones where the president cannot sick the U.S. military on citizens, especially if they're protesting peacefully. But I cannot say this enough. If there's not a General Milley in that room, if there's not somebody else in that room that's willing to stand up and say no to that man, I have no idea what's going to happen. Somebody's going to have to tell him no. And our safety and security in these next 4 years is going to depend a lot on who decides to tell him no and when we learn about it. And who knows, some of these people might grow a backbone. They might do what Miss Hemphill did, and they might go on their own journey, or they might have a good chat with a family member or a therapist, and they might say, hey, you said you wanted to do this the other day. I don't think this is right. I don't agree with this. And we're going to have to see a lot of that. So I'm not saying I have hope that will happen, but I'm saying that anything that's good is going to happen from people doing exactly that. The other thing that I would say is legally, I think that we're all going to have to pay a lot more attention to what's going on in the world. And like I said before, we've all got things that are going on with our relationships, our finances, whatever else we have going on. But we're going to have to start paying attention, to everything. I always tell people, from the president to the dog catcher, we're going to have to pay attention, because things are getting dark and dreary.
Mhm.
But the good news is, I think that if American history teaches us anything, it's that there are ways to make it through these difficult moments. How we do it, not exactly sure, but when the moment presents itself, we're going to have to recognize it and act quickly, I guess, is what I would say. But I have no clear, strong answers for you. I wish I did, but everything is in flux. This is a new sort of thing that we're entering into. Hard to predict where it's going to go.
Yeah. It's, someone said, she first said that all that we were talking about goes against our First Amendment rights. And so she's asking, so you're saying the Constitution doesn't matter anymore?
I am saying, well, let me back this up. One thing that I have never liked is when people just hold up like a copy of the Constitution, because the Constitution is actually a very thin document.
Mm-hmm.
You can read through it. First of all, I doubt that a lot of people, actually have read through it. But even if you read through it, that's not 100% what it means. The Constitution means what the Supreme Court says it does. So for every part of the Constitution, there are, well, depending on, we don't talk about the Third Amendment a lot, but for the First Amendment, Second Amendment, Fourth Amendment, there's hundreds of cases that will tell you what each part of that means. So for instance, for about 100 and some years, the Supreme Court said that there was no individual right to own guns, because the Second Amendment, the right to a well-established militia, that did not extend to an individual right, because they used the word militia, right? Mm-hmm. But then in this other case that is about almost 10-ish years old, then they said, yeah, as a matter of fact, it does extend to that. There is an individual right to gun ownership. That changed things. Saying all of that to say the Constitution only means what the Supreme Court says it means. So the Supreme Court in 1973 said that women had a right to decide if they want to carry pregnancy to term. In 2022, they said, no, you don't have that anymore. The Supreme Court says what the Constitution means. So either we change the folks on the court, or we change the Constitution, or you get a Congress that, in some limited areas, Congress can pass laws that can change some Supreme Court rulings, but they can't change the Constitution. So this is all very difficult stuff. You see why I'm not trying to say we can do X, Y, and Z, because there's a lot of question marks. If I was holding up a flowchart or a PowerPoint right now, it would just be like a question mark in a GIF or a GIF, the people of somebody going like, because there's nothing concrete. I wish I could say that there were certain things that were concrete. The one concrete thing I can say is that so far, I don't think they'll destroy federalism. Federalism means that you have the federal government at the top, but you still have our 50 state governments that get to make laws. I don't think they'll roll back, because they love states' rights so much. I don't think they'll roll back the ability of the states to make certain laws. So that might be the one bright spot in all of this, is that the states will still retain their ability. However, and I know that Miss Pam Purifoy, I know you know about this because I saw you posted it earlier this week. Here in North Carolina, right now, where our legislature has a veto-proof majority, we have another Democratic governor coming in, and they are working overtime right now to strip him of his powers. And they did the dirtiest thing. There is a hurricane relief bill, and they put this little poison pill in the relief bill that says poison no longer has the authority to appoint the people to oversee the Board of Elections, and it goes to the state auditor. And guess who just got elected to be state auditor? A Republican. It was the only statewide office that they won. So they're going to give the authority to this guy all of a sudden. And because they have a veto-proof majority, even though they won't in January, so now they're passing all these crazy laws. And we know that it's insane, but there's nothing that can be done to stop them, because right now all they have to do is override the governor's veto, which is sure to happen. But
I'm hoping. I've asked our local senators and legislators, what can we do? They haven't answered me yet, and I'm hoping. But Pam, this is a mess. You know, in Western North Carolina, which is beautiful, Pam. Our state is North Carolina's beautiful state.
I've been there.
Okay, one part's the beach and one part's the mountains, right? Well, the mountain range got flooded, something horrible, just unprecedented devastation. I mean, they just lifted a boil water mandate just about a week ago.
Well, has it been a week? I thought it was earlier this week. Yeah, that's been about 2 months, maybe.
Yeah, but it went on for a couple of months because the water systems, everything got messed up. And so that relief bill, which we all want for our citizens, they put that poison pill and took all these rights away from our incoming governor, who was a Democrat. I mean, they did some really dirty stuff, so dirty that our old Republican governor talked about him. You know, so what are you guys?
I was shocked when I saw that headline. I was like, wait, who said this?
McCrory is a real. I wasn't too cool on him, but I was very shocked that he spoke up. So we're giving you this back history, these stories that all of these things are happening. Look, you're the grandmother of knowing all the crazy stuff that's happening, but it's just so bizarre. And my journalist friends, they're doing these mental health break things because the news in and of itself is so crazy that they're like, I'm saying to myself, are we in a show episode of Punk'd? You know, are we in Punk'd? Because nothing makes any sense. Nothing makes any sense. Nothing whatsoever. Robert Charles says people who voted for that man belong to one or more four groups: racist, misogynist, greedy, selfish, or the low information ignorant. That is correct. Pam?
Well, I'd say a big percentage, yes, but there are also those that have a lot of money, and so they're for that. And they're just listening to Fox News and Gateway Pundit. They don't have and I know personally family members that master's degree, very wealthy, and they voted for Trump, saying, don't be listening to what they're telling you. They're not going to take away your Social Security. I mean, so, you know, people tend to want to believe what they want to believe and not listen to the facts, you know, and you can't talk to them. You can't share anything with them. It's kind of what we need to do now is just encourage each other. Like I said, in the community, if you see something happening, be a part of supporting that, whatever they're pushing up against, be part of helping to stop that. That's all you could do. Like if they put a bill out there, go there and talk up against it, whatever you can be a part of. Like next week, the Democrat Party have a little meeting for coffee. So I'm going to go there and meet with them and talk with them. Get to know them, you know, and what can I do to help this community? I think the community is what we need to focus on. If we did that throughout the whole United States, I was thinking, what good is that going to do? No, I need to go see the president. No, I got to just stand up for this one little thing right now that they're trying to get rid of this flyer where these LGBT go meet for, it's 14 to 20 years old that are going, they need this group right now more than ever to support each other because they're getting attacked. And the far right want that flyer out of the library. This is insane.
Well, the thing is, it's being LGBTQIA, whatever, is nothing new under the sun. This has been going on forever and since we first got on the planet. So, I mean, really.
Well, they're very ill, and they're just going to try to find something to go. They're addicted to drama. I mean, you know, in fact, that's what I'm afraid of. What you were sharing about our constitutional rights is really frightening because the message of Trump does pardon these J6ers,
Mhm.
what's that message that they will get? They're already crazy and violent as it is. So if they all get out, what will that? I think they can believe that they can have their own grand jury coupled with their own constitutional sheriffs and go arrest you. That's how, because you know about Ivan Racklin and Michael Flynn. That's what they're planning on doing. I've been to one of those trainings with Ammon Bundy where they get 25 citizens. This is a citizen grand jury, and they have their constitutional sheriffs, and they'll go arrest you, and they want to try you for treason. Of course, you know what happens with if you get guilty for treason.
But
So
how
they're
do that?
they're going to believe they could do this and get away with it. Did you think Trump's going to say anything? I
No.
doubt it.
And you know what? Now, Nareissa, now this is for you. I have been hearing from Elie Mystal. He was screaming to his lungs about Merrick Garland not putting the cuffs down on Trump at the beginning. Talking about he didn't want to appear political. What's political about what? I mean, right and wrong. Treason is treason. An insurrection is an insurrection. How crazy do we look? Having somebody being able to run for the highest office in the land, and he's got how many felonies does Trump have?
34 that he was convicted of, but
Yeah.
he's got the other 3 trials, and I can't remember. I think it was almost 200 counts in total, because I know that with the Mar-a-Lago case with the documents, like I think every box was a separate count, so that runs into the high numbers. I think that's what gets the numbers so high. So it was 34 in the New York case, and in the January 6th case, the Georgia case, and then I think the high numbers come from Mar-a-Lago because every single box was a different count in the indictment. But I think that Elie Mystal is both right and wrong. I think there's 2 ways to look at it. I have thought about this a lot myself in the past few days about whether Merrick Garland was, sort of the, wild card here. And had he prosecuted Trump, earlier on, would we not be dealing with this? And I think that on the one hand, I see the argument that they're making because what he did was clearly wrong, and he deserved to be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. Because the thing that is supposed to be true, and that they said, way back in like 1789, like no one man is above the law. Like that's one of the first famous Supreme Court cases that they decided, and so nobody is supposed to be above the law. And they said it again in the 70s with Nixon, right? That nobody's above the law because he was trying to do all this stuff to get around it. But I do think that there is the one place where I part with him is that I do think to prosecute a former or sitting president is a big decision, and it can be viewed politically, right? So I do think you have to be careful about it. Whether or not you want to be as careful with it as Merrick Garland was, I think is the place
That's the problem.
debate. Now, the other way to look at it, though, is to say, Americans have a short memory, and that even if they had prosecuted him, early on, what the cases have gone through, what they have just delayed, would it have mattered? There's a lot of things that we don't know. But I do think that there's room to criticize him because had he been running from jail, I think it would have been a lot harder for him to win a primary.
He shouldn't have been able to run, period. And then our Congress should have put up a law talking about you cannot run again if you've been felonies.
But they can't see. But see, that's an ex post facto law, so that would have been problematic. He could have challenged that. And Colorado did try to kick him off the ballot, and the Supreme Court said, and it was almost unanimous, they said, well, that goes back to things that were from the Civil War, but that also goes to, I think the distinction was between state and federal elections. And because, Rachel Maddow, I think, said it best, but her book wasn't even about this. It was about Spiro Agnew. Remember him, Nixon, vice president? And she said, I heard her on this podcast, and the hosts were asking her basically the same question you said. Well, why can Trump run, then, if they thought about all of this, it's just that, well, when they were drafting the Constitution, they didn't have the idea that somebody who was a convicted felon would not only run, but get majority support.
I know.
Right? And I do think, though, going back to something that Ms. Hemphill said, is that, we keep coming back to education and community.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that as Americans, we're out of community with each other.
Yes.
I don't want to blame it on internet culture or social media, because I think that the fractures started happening even before that, but a lot of us, some people can, if you work from home, you might be able to go a long week in your life without interacting with another human being. But those of us who were born, in the before times, before everything was on the internet and Amazon, you actually had to go to the pharmacy and you had to talk to the pharmacist, because everything wasn't boom, boom, boom. Remember before they had the scanners and you actually had to talk to the checker at the checkout line?
Yeah.
I think that those things kind of helped us see each other as humans and not just sort of like, this is just somebody I have to deal with, as an obstacle. And the more we see each other as friends and neighbors and not as obstacles, I think that that's better. But I think that a lot of our world now is geared towards helping us see each other as obstacles. And I think that we have to look at who's benefiting from keeping us apart. And we haven't talked about this yet. And this is somewhat hopeful. If anything can rein Trump in, it might be the fact that if he loses donors or support, because the corporations might be like, okay, you can't run the whole thing into the ground, and you got to do this because, we can't make money if everybody's, angry or,
or they're not employed.
Yeah.
If you put these high ass tariffs on everything, people aren't going to be shopping. Already people are thinking about, okay, I want people to think about this for sure. Spend less with Amazon and keep your subscription to the excellent reporting of the Washington Post, the investigative reporting of the Washington Post, because what we cannot have is a weakened media, because that is the fourth rail to keep things, try to keep things on track, for us to be able to have a fair and just democracy, at least to be able to speak freely or what have you. We don't want to be like Russia, where people are silenced and killed and murdered and that type of thing,
Yeah. And I do think, though, that's the other thing we haven't talked about yet, is we're headed in that direction, and Trump hasn't even taken office yet, and they call it preemptive obedience. Like, since you mentioned the Washington Post, Bezos, they had drafted an op-ed, the editorial team, to endorse Kamala Harris, and he told them to pull it.
Yes.
And his people had meetings with Trump the next day, and then he writes this op and saying, "Oh no, that was all just coincidence." And of course, everybody's like, "Come on now, like, we know." What does Judge Judy say? Don't pee on my leg and tell me it's raining. Like, okay, come on, man. No, so I do think that you're right, that we have to support media, but I think that based on what I saw during this past election cycle, especially after Harris entered the race, I think that we're going to need to start thinking about media in different ways. If there's a journalist that you like that has a good Substack, or somebody that you can follow on Threads, Blue Sky, we might have to start doing like micro journalism and looking to
what I'm doing.
Yeah, exactly. Like, no, seriously, because I think that the corporate media, how can I put this? I do think there's some good investigative reporting. And I think that they do try their best to follow journalistic standards. But I think that the thing that there was this great interview a few weeks ago before the election where it was Anderson Cooper on CNN, and it was Charlemagne the God from the Breakfast Club and from the Daily Show. And Charlemagne saying to him, like, Anderson, do you not see like the issue with the mainstream media and how they're covering the election? And Anderson was like, no, I'm trying my best to be fair.
Right.
And Charlemagne was like, no, that's the problem, is that if somebody's a fascist, you need to say that. You don't have to be fair when it comes to something like that. You just say it. Period.
And that's our problem. And that's what I'm saying about Merrick Garland. You don't have to say that he's it's not political when you're doing something wrong. It's like my worry is that for all of the young kids, what have we taught them? That you can be a bad person, you can say horrible things, you can commit rape, you can assault people, you can have felonies, all of these things, and you get to be president of the United States?
Are we teaching them that though? We got to teach them that with an asterisk, because we could say you can do these things and become president, asterisk, if you are a rich white man who also has ties to the media, has been a media figure for years, so that people like you and trust your brand. I think that you got to tell them that with all that other stuff, because I think without all that other stuff, Trump doesn't become president, because I can't think of any woman or any black man or any white man who doesn't have those kind of means and connections or celebrity who would have gotten away with the stuff that Trump has. I can't think of anybody who would have gotten away with it. But the good part, again, here's the happy part though. I do think that if we have midterm elections in 2026, and I hope we will, and if we have a presidential election in 2028, hope we will, Trump is a singular figure. I think if Trump doesn't do The Apprentice, he doesn't become president, because he's just some rich guy who had this cameo in Home Alone 2. But because he had that show, The Apprentice, and people were like, oh, he's smart, he's a business guy, and he does all things, not understanding how reality TV works, and it's not really reality, and how all of that works. But he was able to build that brand. I can't think of anybody else who has that same sort of like built-in name recognition and other stuff, even if they believe the same stuff that Trump believes. DeSantis believes all the same things that Trump believes, but he, crashed and burned very quickly as a presidential candidate. None of them have that same sort of.
That's because Trump is a BSer and he's a talker. He is a salesman. His real talent is in sales and marketing. Yes. That's his gift. Pam, what attracted you to him I know that you've been a lifelong Republican, but did you immediately like him as a candidate, or what? I mean, how did you even get connected to him even?
I know. No, when he said, I'll grab you by the pee, I called up my family right away. And what MAGA was able to do, a lot of people, they just care about the fact that he's going to make the rich richer. And so when you're talking to people that are educated and very wealthy, which I was, that's all they care about. They say, oh, it's just men's locker room, talk. They minimize and overlook it because of their own goals and what their motives are. And he just stands for what they want. They're not any different than Trump. Most of these people, they're the same. I just noticed your little comment. I just wanted to say somebody that is talking. I wouldn't put all journalists in a box. I would name the journalists, start naming the ones that are not being real journalists, because there are some good ones out there.
There are some excellent ones. I have many good friends.
I just wanted to say Trump has done a very good job, and we are allowing it. We are all afraid what is Trump going to do? Well, he needs to get afraid what we're going to do. We're going to stand up for this Constitution. We're going to push back. We're going to get in our community and start finding out what's happening, right? We got to do the opposite of what they're trying to do to us, because he's laid out the groundwork so Pam Hemphill will shut up. Let's smear the hell out of her, which they did. You know this, Pam. They called my local newspaper and told lies about me and put my daughter's name out there. Well, that's okay. I called the editor. I said, you better take my daughter's name out. And I'll go to that corner again with my sign, even though the Liberty Dogs and the Trump train comes by, they're going to see that they're not silencing me. You push back on the bullies, but legally, right? And peacefully. But you get that mama bear attitude. You can do this. You don't let them scare you or frighten you away. You get your Democrats in your area that and people that you know together and get your think tanks and say, wait, they're trying to pass this bill. Let's go stop it. Let's get together and go stop it and talk up against it. We're going to have to do a lot more work. But I think once they see that they're not going to just be able to scare us like a bully, we don't like bullies, and that we're going to push back and push back hard, and we're going to go out there and peacefully protest, bring your military. We'll see what the military is going to do. I'm going to trust the military that they're not going to do anything illegal. They're not going to let Trump do anything illegal. But that's going to be up to us, you guys. It's not up to one person. We got to stick with this together. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
It does. And I just want to add to that. We are probably going to need to get creative about how we protest too, because some of the ways of protest, not to say that they're bad, but because they're well known, it's easy to say, like, you know how in some of we were talking about the Black Lives Matter protests in 2020 and how like they would send certain people in there to like start trouble and other stuff, like when it started off as a peaceful protest, and then that guy Rittenhouse who shot into the crowd, shot those people, you know. So we may have to be more creative in the ways that we're protesting, not just for physical safety or legal reasons, but just also to think about how can I, you know, get my point across, you know, and still do this safely and effectively. I think that I still think the classic modes of protest are on the table, but I think that, you know, we got to do some other things.
Well, what did Rosa Parks do?
Exactly.
Put them in their pocketbook.
You rise to exactly.
Be the money, because the talks, because they have a listing of different businesses that gave to Trump and what have you. And we need to stop patronizing them.
There you go.
To organize non-patronizing. This is our biggest time of year right now to spend money. We need to like Zachary Clipper says, protest with your money.
Yeah, and I think that's true. And I know that some people are very upset because they're like, well, wait a second, you know, to use the example that you said, well, you know, the Montgomery bus boycott was different because it was one community and it was one thing and all that. Yeah, but that's how things start. And if we're very smart about how we channel our focus and channel our energy, you know, a boycott is harder today in the sense that some company you don't like is going to profit from something you buy. Quick detour. I love this show called The Good Place. It's by the same guy who was a head writer on The Office and Brooklyn Nine-Nine. His name is Michael Schur. But The Good Place, it's a wonderful show. I won't spoil it for you if you haven't seen it. But one of the things that they talk about is, because it's a show about what happens after you die, but it's like, how many points should you get for doing something good? And it said back like 200 years ago, if you want to pick a rose for your mom, you just go out to the garden, clip it yourself, and give it to your mom. So then that's good person points. But today, you know, you go to a florist shop. Did you drive to get there? Then that's air pollution. You know, did they use pesticides on the roses? Yes. Where'd the roses come from? You know, how much shipping was involved? So basically you get negative points and you get bad person points by the end of the day because the world is so complex. And yes, we know that, but yet and still the companies who have showed their hands, who we know for a fact, like Hobby Lobby, they started this whole ball rolling with women's reproductive rights and all of that. They've showed their hand. Chick-fil-A is another one. The ones who we know, even though there might still be, you know, some railway company or something that's profiting when I shop at Target or whatever, at least like 100% of my dollar isn't going to go to people that are going to then reinvest it into trying to take away the rights of, you know, me and my family and everything. And I just love what you said, Ms. Hemphill, about that mama bear energy, because you gave me something that I just had that visual. You know how they say that when your child is under distress, that a mom can like lift a car off of. That's what we're gonna have to do.
That's
because we all want our kids to live in a better world than us. So if I gotta lift up this Buick of, you know, madness legally to do it, then that's what we're gonna have to. That's what we're gonna have to do.
Well, I just called the library and said I support that posters staying there. What am I going to do next? Are they going to take it to the city hall? Then I'll go there. I don't know if I can participate because it's a different city, but I'll be there and support. See, little things starts with that. Well, like you said, the bus with Rosa Parks, it was one thing. And you just start with one thing in your community, but you have to get support. I could use some support in this community right now, but maybe I'll get it once I'm actually there. Maybe I'll run into some other people because I'm going to go check. I want to make sure that poster's still up because these kids need a safe place to go. And how else are they going to advertise about their group? And it's at a church, but they don't want it in the library. Well, too bad.
But also, that goes back to something else, like not knowing the Constitution and First Amendment rights. And I'm assuming that it's a public library, which means it's so I'm assuming that if it's anything like our local library, pretty much any group has the right to advertise their functions and everything there. So they just want to act like LGBT people don't exist, but that's not the world that we live in. And to me, if your faith is so small that just knowing that, oh my gosh, gay people exist or something, if that's going to make you run from the church, you didn't have good faith to start with. Why? No, that's not good. That's not where we should be. Right. We should be lifting each other up in all ways. And I can't with that. But that's a whole other question.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Wow. Pam, I think you're absolutely right. I feel from this conversation, I feel empowered. I feel like, because on my last conversation, I had a big panel, it was about 9 of us, and 9 or 10. And somebody kept putting in the chat, but what's the solution? What's the solution? Because we were really just getting our feelings out about the election. And so I feel empowered because we each can do something and we cannot roll over. We can't roll over. And we have to get in our churches. I think a lot more people are going to have to, we do have to, it's power in numbers. It just is. If everybody gets together in their community, within their own community, everything is local. If we do that, we can save us. We can make it. And we can push back on Trump. Letter writing, phone calls, the whole thing, because we're not tolerating this 2 years from now. Everybody's going to go. We're going to get them out.
Yeah. He is not king. He wants to be, but we're going to show him that he is not king because they're underestimating what Democrats are capable of doing. And I'm going to see it. Women like you too. Oh my God, don't let you guys loose. I mean, legally, it's going to be a ball to watch you guys, and I'll be right there with you. Anything you give me an idea, tell me what to do legally and peacefully. You got me doing it for you. I'll help you any way I can.
Exactly. And what I like about this conversation too is, again, coming back to Rosa Parks and Montgomery. Montgomery was one community, but what they did lit a fire that spread throughout the whole country. So you can never underestimate how one little spark can just be that one thing that is just like, we're going to do it from here. We're going to, we can't handle this, and we're going to take it from here because we're not going to let this happen. And I do think that there's going to be a lot of that where people are going to push back, and we're going to have to do, in big ways and small ways, the best that we can. Oh, and I would also add, support the organizations that are doing what they can to fight back legally. That I've been seeing a lot from the ACLU, the NAACP, LDF, Planned Parenthood. If you can volunteer with those people and organizations, or if you can donate, if you don't have the time, but they're going to need all the help they can get to, just kind of keep things functioning at a bare minimum. Southern Poverty Law Center, that's another. But there's all these organizations out there that are doing good work and that are trying to make sure that the rights of immigrants, people of color, the LGBTQ community, workers, all these people are protected. Yes, women are protected so that we can be here to vote in 2026. And yeah, that's what I think. Yeah, we can't forget that as we're organizing individually, and I just read this today, it said, don't reinvent the wheel. If there's another group or organization in your town that's already doing something, join up. Don't start a whole new thing, because that's
Right.
taking away the
Yes.
Right, right. Absolutely. Pam, I'm going to let you get the last word and we're going to call it a night.
The last word? You caught me off guard.
You said the last word for the night of your pearl of wisdom.
Just remember, our history has shown that fascist has never won. We wake up, we push back, and that's just what you were sharing in your own community. Find what you what you feel is wrong that's going on, and get involved. Don't let these bullies scare you, or what they're saying, or what Trump's going to try to do. Good luck. I'm sorry, but he is not God, and there either he is a God or there isn't. And I'm sure not going to make Trump a God. So
Amen.
let him, just do what you can. And if it's just loving your neighbor and thinking about who needs you right now, give them a call and tell them you love them, and everything's going to be okay. Even if you don't believe it, just fake it and say it. Because it gets contagious.
That's right. That's right. And it spreads. Well, listen, guys, I have enjoyed you. It's happy Thanksgiving to everyone.
Yes, happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Yes.
Be positive at Thanksgiving dinner. Come together with your friends and family. And, we're not going to talk about politics, but talk about being together. And you don't need those expensive gifts. Save your money, because you're going to need it if these tariffs go up or whatever. Take care of yourself. Enjoy one another. Let's wave everybody off. Good night, guys.
Good night,
everyone.
Thank you so much
for participating. Good night.
It's great meeting her.